welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com. Hello, beautiful people of Steelers Nation. Thank you for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Noah Strackbine, joined every Friday by my main man, Derek "The Kid" Bell. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/allsteelerstalk. Like this video, be a friend, tell a friend to go use our promo code for 20% off, plus free shipping at manscaped.com. Derek, moments before we jumped on here, the Pittsburgh Steelers made a huge announcement, re-signing Terrell Edmunds, according to Jeremy Fowler. I believe Ian Rappaport came out. A one-year, $2.5 million deal, plus some cornerback rankings that we're going to get into, and a few options for the Steelers in the mid-rounds there. But let's start with Terrell Edmunds. One-year deal, returns to Pittsburgh. I don't think it really changes much of their plans moving forward. Your first thoughts, which these could be your first thoughts on the matter. What are you thinking here?
Perfect, in my opinion. I love it. I'm super excited about it. I know Edmunds was looking for a little bit longer term deal, and probably more money. I think that $2.5 million is a steal for the Steelers. Like, I know Edmunds is like very polarizing in the Steelers fan base, and everybody's just kind of been down on him for a while just because he's never really quite lived up to that first round hype. But in terms of getting a safety who's, been your starting safety on some good defenses, he's only missed one game in his career. He's gotten slightly better every single season. Getting a starter like that for $2.5 million on one year deal, like, I mean, dude, that's money right there. Those are the types of signings to fill out like the middle of your roster that like really provides some great value, in my opinion. And what this does, I think, more than anything, is they go into this draft with really what I can see is only one glaring need where they don't have a starter. And that's at wide receiver. Like, they need a third receiver. So aside from that need, man, they've really solidified all these other spots, at least with like placeholders, to where if they need to move up and go get a Malik Willis or something like that in the first round, and you have to give up that second round pick, you're not panicking about trying to find a starter who's ready to come in on day one and contribute. Like, you don't need that right now. You can draft the safety a little bit later and develop him to take over in year two if Edmunds walks or anything like that. So I really I like the move a lot.
Yeah, me too. And you said this a couple of weeks ago that the Steelers were going to draft a safety, but if they didn't have another safety, even if that rookie is somebody that's a second or a third round pick, like, it's somebody that it's going to be a rookie. There's going to be hiccups, and those come with your first year in the NFL. Now, I think this is, for one, it gives Minka as much comfortability as possible for his next season. And then he could get into, we have somebody else. But at that point, you've played with that somebody else for a whole season, even if it's as a backup. Trey Norwood will be hitting his third season, which I have very high expectations for Trey Norwood in year two. I think he's got a ton of talent to just be that chess piece, but a very valuable chess piece. And like you said, $2.5 million. I mean, I don't know what his other offers were. According to Jeremy Fowler, he had offers from the Dolphins and the Bengals. I don't think either of them have a glaring need for safety, but I can't imagine that he was getting less. I can't imagine anybody was like, oh yeah, here's $1 million to come play for us. You just started 60 out of 64 games in your first 4 years in the NFL. Plus, on top of that, like you said, he gets slightly better every year. He never came into the NFL as a guy who was supposed to be a coverage safety. He was just here to be a run support. He plays run support well. He's getting better-ish in coverage, even if I think he has hit his ceiling, but that ceiling's fine for a starter. And as good old Billy says here, the worst starter on your football team is Terrell Edmunds. I feel really good about that. And yeah. I mean, that's debatable if that is who it is, but he's in that category, and I feel really, really promising about that.
And he's definitely not their worst starter. I mean, like, he's just a solid player, like a guy who's never lived up to expectations, but at the same time, like, he does provide value in that he's just steady. And going into the season with less question marks is always a good thing. And you mentioned like that camaraderie and that communication factor between him and Minka on the back end. Like, you want your safeties to be on the same wavelength And like having played together for 2 years, this will be the fourth season they've been together.
Third
Third
season.
season. So I mean, they've been together for 2019.
No, fourth season, because
season. So
Edmunds' second
you
season.
look
So
at
this will be
those
his fourth
guys. I
season.
mean, a lot of times like pre-snap, you don't see the Steelers in these last couple seasons, even though their defense did regress last year. You don't see those like big plays down the field and just like miscommunication errors. And like that, a lot of that's the safeties getting in the right spot, being in the right spot, getting other people lined up in the right spot. So I definitely do. I definitely do like the signing. I don't think, and the good thing about the deal is like, it's a 1 year, $2.5 million deal. So they're not married to him long term. Like, obviously, I think the Steelers have at least pondered about like trying to upgrade the position, which is cool. And I understand that. But like, if the draft falls a certain way, say you still have that second or third round pick, you can go get a guy like Jaquan Brisker and play him in sub packages. You can go get a guy in the second or third round like Nick Cross and develop him to take over in year 2, so that we don't run into the same situation that we ran into with Edmunds, where they're forced to play because Morgan Burnett's hurt and he's not really playing well. He's not going to be forced to play right away. And then when he struggles, the fan base doesn't get too low on him, which like Edmunds really, in my opinion, I think for a lot of people, he just got off on the wrong foot with Steelers fan base because he didn't have a good rookie year and he took a little bit to kind of get his footing in the league, which is not really all that different from a lot of rookies. But like now, I think he's a solid player. This is a good signing. I don't understand. Like if anyone is like knocking this signing as like a bad signing, I don't understand that at all.
No, and even like with the comparisons of, we should have went and got the Honey Badger, like,
yeah.
If the options are Terrell Edmunds at $2.5 million or Honey Badger at $14 million, now I'm taking Terrell Edmunds because it's a quality move. It builds for the future, just like you said, without any hiccups. It allows, again, I'm going to go back to Trey Norwood. It allows Trey Norwood to play free safety, which is what his natural position is, a little bit of slot maybe in sub packages, and doesn't have to worry about being a bigger dude. I mean, last preseason, I went on a whole rant with Donnie about how I thought Trey Norwood eased up on a play because he didn't want to make a tackle in the NFL.
He did multiple times.
Right? And I just think that playing strong safety is not where he needs to be. Perfect move. I am worried for Terrell Edmunds. And I said this to you before the show. I just tweeted it out not long ago. There's a part of me that thinks that Terrell Edmunds signing a 1-year deal is going to somewhat nick his opportunity to be a starting safety outside of Pittsburgh, because he's going to be here one more year. He'll be 26, turning 27 next offseason. I don't see him getting any better. And right now he's fine. He's a starting quality safety. There's a lot of safeties in the NFL. And you saw that with guys. I mean, last year was Malik Hooker, who ended up in Dallas. And Malik Hooker has a ton of talent. Even if he dealt with injuries, he's got a lot of talent. And I think there's a lot of guys that are kind of in that same boat. I mean, KZ, the dude that the Steelers were questioning signing again, still doesn't have, or he does have a job, but I believe it's a backup somewhere. I think that's where Terrell Edmunds is coming. So I am a little worried about that one, but that might be my only about the whole thing.
And this is also a year, like it could be a make or break year for him. Like I don't really see that ceiling of like being an impact type of player. To where he's going to break the bank or, get a big deal from somebody. But I do think, it could be some motivation being on a 1-year deal. Like we'll see what happens with that.
Oh yeah. Jason's got to go in. So $2.5 million is the signing. Cause I saw you ask this earlier in the chat. Could still go sign a running back. That's a slight curve there. We just lost Derek. I don't know what happened in there, but to go out and get a running back, the Pittsburgh Steelers will clearly need to add a running back. I went on a whole rant about how, maybe they could get Deebo Samuels and maybe he could play a little running back behind Najee Harris. That being said, I do think at some point the Pittsburgh Steelers go out, they grab a running back. Some people say it's in the NFL draft. Maybe very late. Honey Badger. So Jason believes both the Honey Badger and Terrell Edmunds. I don't see that one happening. Unfortunately, I think the Honey Badger is going to go for $14 million somewhere. And I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to say comfortable with Terrell Edmunds, add a safety in the draft as early as the second round, does bump them from the first round pick, unfortunately. Quentin Lake is a guy Really, really like Quentin Lake. Don't know where he's going to fall. There's some questions about if he's maybe a third round guy. And I don't think the Steelers are going to reach on a guy like that because they do have options. Jaquan Brisker is a guy that they sent their defensive backs coach to. Really, really liked that pro day. Nick Cross is obviously a teammate and roommate of Dino Tomlin out in Maryland. Those are guys to keep an eye on. There's Andrew Booth, who somebody mentioned it in the chat, who's a corner, but still a defensive back. And I think that they could just be approaching, give me secondary guys to come in here and play. Rather get a veteran running back just to go backwards here. Not many left on the market. I agree and disagree. I think that you could find a running back, and on top of that, guys will get released. So that's an addition that I don't see would happen for quite some time. We got Derek back here.
Sorry, I'm having some connection issues with my Wi-Fi.
Glad that you made it back. It's all right. We were just talking about the Honey Badger, Quentin Lake, and some running backs because I didn't understand what HB meant. Quentin Lake, though, is a name that a couple guys here have tossed out there in the chat. 7th round guy. I think that might be late. I just said 2nd, 3rd round for a guy like Jaquan Brisker, Nick Cross would make a little bit more sense. I just think that he's a little iffy still.
Yeah. Obviously the Pittsburgh connection. He's Cornell Lake, former Steelers son, I believe.
Yes, he is.
Lake's a guy that I've seen some people that are higher on than I am, but definitely a day 3 guy with some developmental traits out of UCLA. I do think that they could. I think they're going to draft a safety. I do agree with Noah, though. I think it's going to be earlier than that. I don't know if they can afford to wait that long to add a guy, but we'll see. I mean, everything's going to be contingent on what the Steelers do in the 1st round, because if they trade up, they're going to lose some picks. So, like, that really reduces the amount of ammo or the amount of slots that you can fill aside from the quarterback position. So, I definitely think that that's, on the table in terms of like trading up, what that trigger point could be to start making some phone calls to go up and get Malik Willis. We don't really know. I think it's probably if he gets past 6, I think the phones are going to be jumping a little bit on Pittsburgh.
6.
I do. I think it starts. He gets past Carolina, and I think the Steelers really want to look to move up. I think about I know the Giants have a ton of needs, man, and I know that they keep saying, like, we haven't done enough to surround Daniel Jones. I think that the Giants are probably going to want to move back from one of those spots at 7 or 9, not because there's not going to be talented guys there. I just think if they could recoup, say, a 1st-round pick next year and move back from like 9 or 7 or something like that, I think that they would be interested because next year's quarterback class is a lot better. So say Daniel Jones, you can still get an impact player in the 1st round. You can take a pass rusher. They probably won't. I mean, they could be interested in a tackle to pair with Andrew Thomas, but they could get some more ammo for next year's quarterback class, provided that Daniel Jones doesn't pan out the way that they want him to. So, they're an interesting spot. I think Atlanta's another team like in that late, top 10 territory. Like Atlanta needs everything. I don't know if anybody's looked at Atlanta's roster. That shit is terrible. I mean, it is bad. They have no receivers. They got Kyle Pitts, who's a really good player. But, I mean, they need everything. I mean, I still think they need help up front on the offensive line. They need pass rushing so bad. The Steelers have like 4 or 5 guys that would be Atlanta's best pass rusher. Their secondary is good, but, like, that's really the only spot. Like, it's solid, I think, but it's the only spot that I'd be like, I probably wouldn't take a corner. But those teams, I think, could trade back and look to get more ammo if the Steelers really want to get aggressive and get Malik.
I never thought about Atlanta, but that does make sense. The Giants are a team I've been interested to see what happens because I do believe that they are a very bad team right now. It's very true, though. And that could be, but what are you going to give up? Like, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're going up to the Giants, I mean, that's 11-12 is a lot of compensation that you're going to have to give up.
It's a 1st-round pick for next year is what it's probably going to be.
But just a 1st-round pick? I think you're going to have to give up more than that. You might have to give up a 3rd this year.
Yeah, it might be another day 2 pick in addition to that. I don't have the trade calculator pulled up on my Mac. But yeah, I did. I mean, it's going to cost a ransom. But like we've talked about many times, like we've talked about quarterbacks, every day for the past, 4 or 5 months. But if the guy is worth it and they pan out, like the cost associated with that guy is null and void. Who cares? Like if Malik reaches his ceiling, which is like a top 10 quarterback ceiling, it doesn't matter. Like if you give up 1 first-round pick, 2 first-round picks, like it doesn't matter. Like he's those types of players at the most important position in the game. There is no cost that's too great for a franchise quarterback. So
let me ask this. I saw this the other day. I saw somebody, it was like a random exec or whatever, an anonymous exec said that Malik Willis is a better prospect than Trey Lance and Justin Fields was coming out of school. I wanted your opinion on that because I figured you would either very strongly agree or disagree with
I very strongly disagree with that. I was a big Trey Lance guy last year. I actually wrote an article on Trey Lance 2 years ago. And I was blown away by his tape. The 1 year he started at North Dakota State, I was blown away just by how advanced he was. I mean, he was recruited as a safety coming out of high school. But you look at a guy like that has – I mean, his mechanics were so good for a guy that had only played – like he was so young, and he had only really played like 1 year at the position, like as a starter. And obviously all the athletic – tools that he comes with, the live arm and, being so fast and such a talented runner. He's tough. I just think that he was way further along in terms of like just being a processor and especially with his mechanics than a guy like Malik is. Fields, same way. I thought his mechanics were good. They probably weren't as good as Lance's, but you look at what Fields did at Ohio State, man, it wasn't like your normal Ohio State quarterbacks where they're eating a lot off like yak and stuff underneath. Like Fields is a legit playmaker, man. He could push the ball down the field, very accurate to all 3 levels. Another freak athlete. He ran like a 4.4 unofficial 40 at his pro day. So I strongly disagree with that. I don't think Malik's quite there in terms of like maybe if you're comparing like the upside just because Malik's such a talented runner, like he might not be as straight line fast as those two are. But, like, it's pretty freaking close. And the way Malik is built, like, in his lower half, like, he just breaks so many tackles. Like, he's hard to get on the ground. But I don't see the same type of, like, passing ability with all those different things factored in. And Malik, especially early on.
So where would you put – if this was a normal draft, okay, where would – say it was last year or even next year. Is Malik like a day 2 guy, like an easy day 2 guy? Is he a Lamar Jackson where you're thinking about maybe the end of the first round?
I think Malik would have went probably above Mac Jones. But I don't know. I don't know about Zach Wilson. The top 3, absolutely not. I don't think.
I was going to say, when did
I don't think the league would have viewed it like that. But I could have seen like a team again, like betting on traits. Like we've talked about multiple times, and I've ranted quite a bit on here about when you're taking a quarterback, take a big swing. Look for those high upside, those traits that you're looking for, and trying to get a top 10 guy because you're looking around the league, and I think there is a little bit of a shift now in the way that teams are starting to view quarterbacks over the last couple of years. Like you've seen Josh Allen's the example everybody uses, but you've seen teams more intrigued by those traits and that raw talent and ability than you have maybe like college production or just like having great film. And Malik is a good example of that. Malik struggled at times last year, but the traits are so like they're so intriguing. So I think that he would have went above a guy like Mac Jones, who just doesn't have near the same amount of arm and obviously the mobility and stuff like that too. So
it's going to get interesting in this last week. Let me ask this: is that where this is going? Do we both? I kind of like now have just totally turned this Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go. They're going to go get a quarterback in round 1. I don't even think there's any debate anymore. There was questions. I had serious thought in my last mock. I was preparing to just get some crazy, like trade back up in the first round, get your guy, get another guy, make it happen. Desmond Ridder was fine. Now I'm starting to think like the Pittsburgh Steelers are just like gearing up to say, hey man, we're just going to go get a quarterback. We're going to be fine with that. Everybody can hate us. Best player on the board at some point will be Malik Willis, and that's who we're going to get.
I've been on this train for a long time. I think they're going to trade up for Malik. I've thought that ever since the Senior Bowl. I mean, I've thought that. So I don't. You look at where they've shown their interest. It's been very quarterback specific. They've done a ton of homework on this class. They've talked about wanting to add a quarterback.
100 times.
They signed a backup from next year to be their starter, or from last year to be their starter next year in Trubisky. I think it's going to be a quarterback. The only thing I really don't know is what's the trigger point as far as what pick does Willis have to get to? Is it 7? Is it 12? Is it 15? Like, are you trying to just get ahead of New Orleans? Like,
is it 2?
What is it?
What if it's 2? Do you think? Okay, so this is my thought here. So we have a live stream going. We have the draft special until 8 o'clock, which is the kickoff of the draft on draft night. Okay, then I have to pack up real quick and drive as fast as humanly possible to Southside to get to the facility before the Pittsburgh Steelers make that pick, which in my head is a clear indication that the Pittsburgh Steelers will trade up to number 2 with the Detroit Lions and try to get Malik Willis. Is that like it's crazier things have happened, not with the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously. But if we're talking 6, what's the difference between 6 and 2?
Another first-round pick.
Yeah, you thinking? Do you think that's? Yeah. Do you think that's true? Like, this number 2 pick is 3 first-round picks. Number 6 is 2.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at this trade calculator right now. I mean, to go from 20 to let's say 7.
Go 8 to 12.
That's about.
Somebody asked. Steel Wolverine asked, "What's the realistic price for 20 to 8 to 12 here?"
That's more like a second and some change. So maybe being able to get away with that, not giving away a first-round pick.
What about pick 8?
Let's see what pick 8 looks like. My laptop's running so slow. 850. That looks like it's probably going to be a first, like next year's first. But I mean, it could be. I mean, it could be a second, a third. I mean, it could be some. I mean, it just depends. Like, a lot of that is dependent on year to year because there's always a tax on quarterbacks. Like, if teams know that you're coming up to get a quarterback, they're going to tax you on it. So it also depends on like who you're trading with. Like, for example, like I said about the Giants really might value like next year's class more than this year's class. So they might say, I don't want your second and third round pick for this year. I want your first for next year because I'm going to get quarterback next year if things don't work out. So we just really don't really know. But I mean, that's kind of the range.
All right. There's one more in here. I want to hear this. All right. Before we get into your cornerback rankings and some options for the Pittsburgh Steelers, if good old Hudson's got a great question here. If you were Kevin Colbert, who would you pick? This is an obvious answer. If you haven't watched the show, you should just go back to any episode with Derek on it, and you will find that the answer, he's from Clemson and he plays cornerback.
Yeah, we can tell Hudson's a first-time listener around these parts. Man, I would pick Andrew Booth. That's who I pick. I don't understand. Booth's the top 10 player for me in the class. I'm bullish on him as a pro. I liked the film in college, but I think he's got really a star ceiling. I really do. I think he can be one of the best cornerbacks in the National Football League. Lot of experience in zone. He's got the traits to play man coverage, freakish athleticism, exactly the type of athletic traits that you want out of, the best cornerback on your roster. So that's who I would pick because I view cornerbacks, and it sucks for me because like as a draft guy, I spend a lot of time watching corners, as like y'all are about to find out, but it sucks because the Steelers don't really view that position the same way that I do. The Steelers try to get away with, building their defense from the front back. They don't put a high price on corners, so it kind of sucks for me because I usually don't get to see those type of guys in Pittsburgh. But yeah, Booth would be my answer easily.
All right, what about over Derek Stingley here? If Stingley dropped, you had Booth and Stingley sitting there at 20.
So you're about to see the rankings. I don't know if we're going to put them up or if we're just going to go through them. But so Stingley for me is actually cornerback 2. I really like Stingley, and I mean he has a lot of the same like freakish movement skills, like for his size, press man corner. Not as much experience in zone, but like you're not taking a guy like that to play zone anyway. Really good ball skills, came onto the scene at LSU 2019 and really dominated as a freshman. He was 18 years old. So really impressive. I think he has 6 interceptions. But the thing with Stingley, man, he just hasn't been healthy. And like when he has been healthy or on the field, I don't know if he's been 100%. And the tape just the last 2 years really isn't. I mean, it really isn't that great. I mean, it's his 2020 was good. I thought last year was even a little bit more down, in my opinion. But you really got to be comfortable with that injury history. That Liz Frank injury is really scary. So that's something. But I mean, as far as like potential, I mean, you don't dominating in an SEC conference like that with all those wide receivers and everything. Like that's incredibly impressive.
Oh yeah,
and something that you can't take away from it. It's just a matter of like, how much do you weigh that 2019 tape against guys like Sauce and Booth, who have gotten better every year? Like especially Sauce. Like Sauce is my cornerback 3, but Sauce got better every single year. Like he improved on a lot of things from 2 years ago last year, and he just kept getting better. So like the trajectory of those guys is completely different.
Yeah, I agree. Booth is the dude. You've convinced me about Booth a long time ago. I've stuck it out. I've defended him quite well. Jordan Davis would be another one that I think would be like 1B, maybe number 2 on my list. That would realistically be there at 20. My only concern with Jordan Davis is that he's not a 3-down defender. And to waste a first-round pick on a guy who's only going to play 2 snaps a series is concerning. The value makes me very concerned. Also, big dudes like that, like you could turn out to be a Vita Vea, or you could turn out to be a bust. And we've seen plenty of both sides, and it does make me nervous. That being said, the second I looked Jordan Davis in the face, and I had to look at him like this, obviously, at the NFL Combine was the second I was just like, I told you and Donnie immediately. I was like, why did no one tell me that Jordan Davis is the walking Hulk? The man is ginormous, the biggest human I've ever seen in my whole life. So you got to love it. All right, let's get into your cornerback rankings. Unfortunately, I did not make a graphic because I was at Dwayne Haskins Memorial Service all morning long. But you just alluded to it. Your number 1, which might be a surprise to a lot of people, is Andrew Booth out of Clemson, followed by Derek Stingley out of LSU. And number 3, which might throw a lot of people off here, is Sauce Gardner, falling all the way to 3 on your list. Talk us through those thoughts there.
Yeah. So to clarify, Sauce is still a top 12. I think he's going to slide into the top 10 of like my big board. I've started like building that out last week. So I'm still really high on Sauce. Like, this is not me not being a believer. Like I said, he did improve last year in terms of like not being as grabby at the break point. And he's a true press man corner, which like I value a ton. Like you can look through my rankings and see very clearly, in my opinion, that like I value man coverage significantly over zone, just because like I think in today's NFL, like you have to be able to play man and press in particular. So, but with some of my concerns with Sauce, I don't know if he plays as fast or maybe as like straight line fast as he ran at the combine. Like I don't think he's slow by any means. I just don't think he's a 4-4 flat type of guy. And my biggest concern is like he's a little reckless at the line of scrimmage. And like when you're playing weaker competition, which Cincinnati did, he didn't play a ton of like big name wide receivers. Like it's not like he was in the SEC having to go up against, the Alabama kids twice a year like some of the other guys did. But when you're playing receivers that he played, like a lot of them would just like easily let Sauce get their hands on him. And it's not going to be like at the next level. And he's a little bit, I guess, reckless with his punches. And like at the next level, if you're going to be a guy that likes to get hands on receivers at the line of scrimmage, you just have to have like perfect timing and placement. Like you can't miss, because it doesn't matter how fast you are, how good you can flip your hips. Like you're done. Guys at the next level. And they're not going to be like a lot of guys I watch on tape. Like they're standing there flat footed and just letting 2-hand jam him. Like that's not going to happen at the next level either. So I think the competition will be a little bit better for him at the next level. And I like those other guys, the way they move a little bit better, but I'm still a big fan of Sauce though.
I mean, who isn't a big fan of Sauce? I'm shocked to see him number 3, especially because you've talked about Stingley being the most natural at the beginning, but has dealt with injuries. And I have not watched a moment of Sauce Gardner where I haven't thought, he's playing excellent defense on this corner.
Well,
I mean, and you dig much deeper than I do, obviously.
yeah, and another thing about Sauce that's just going to be different. Like, the dude didn't give up a college touchdown, which
That's what I mean.
It's incredible. But, like,
and he stands 6'3".
Like, teams were so, like, the conference that they play in and the teams that they were playing, they were legitimately scared of him. Like, there was quotes from I've seen quotes from articles just this draft season of like coaches legitimately saying like, yeah, we put our worst receiver over there on Sauce because like we ain't gonna throw at him. And that's why like I really like Kobe Bryant. He's in my top 10 because he's like battle tested, man. Like if you play opposite Sauce in that conference, like you're gonna see a ton of targets. And he held up really well, so I was impressed by that. But like Sauce, like he didn't really get tested like that. Just on a week-to-week basis. So I think that's going to be a concern, or that's going to be a change for him. Rookie cornerbacks in the league, veteran quarterbacks, they go at those guys nonstop because it's just it's the hardest, in my opinion. I love scouting corners. It's the hardest transition to make to the pros aside from quarterback. Like it's just a totally different ball game. So yeah, it's gonna be a transition for him. But I'm still really high on him as a prospect, though.
Do you think, just one more question before we move on to the next three, do you think that Gardner has like a Jalen Ramsey potential to play across the field instead of, he played just outside and primarily just played one side while Kobe Bryant played the other?
Yeah,
but he's big.
I don't see that. The thing about Ramsey that was extremely unique, and I think that this is an area that both, just because, I mean, mainly because they're body types, but like that Booth and Stingley had, that change of direction that they have is really, it's just better, in my opinion, than Sauce. Sauce moves extremely well for a guy his size, but like Ramsey was a freak in that regard because like his reaction time and his click and close ability is just like, it's what you'd expect from like a 5'8", 175, 180 pound corner. And like he does it at, his size, which is just freakish. Obviously, Sauce is physical enough to where like he could play like he could do some of the things Ramsey could do. I just don't know if he's as fluid. But yeah, I mean, still really good.
Yeah, he's still a monster in 6'3", which is continues to stand out for me. All right, 4, 5, 6 is Kaiir Elam out of Florida, who many, and you have mentioned this in the article, have slept on, it feels, and it's kind of somewhat fallen to the wayside, his name. Number 5 is Trent McDuffie, who I have seen in some mock drafts being a top 10 pick, which has somewhat blown my mind. And number 6, his college teammate, Kyler Gordon, both out of Washington. What's your thoughts there?
So, I mean, Booth feels like, to me, just because of how I value him, I'm obviously like, I'm probably like, of all the draft people, I feel like I've got to be in the top like 2% with him where I have him graded. But Kaiir feels like the other like forgotten man. He's definitely not in that same tier with those top 3 guys. I think he's a tier below. But like in terms of like if you're looking for a press corner, a guy with a lot of man-to-man ability, like he can play off man too. Like he's got all the tools. I mean, he's a longer, lean guy, good size. I think he's like 6'1.5", and he answered some speed questions at the combine by running that blazing 40. I don't think he plays quite that fast, but yeah, he's got really unique footwork for a taller corner. He has the ability to mirror receivers at the line and good hips again for a taller corner. So I'm really intrigued by him. The thing that I liked the best was I thought that his best film came against whenever he faced the best competition. And you looked at him when he played Alabama and you looked at like how he matched up with Jameson Williams. I mean, he like, I don't want to say dominated, but he blanketed Williams on a handful of reps that were just really impressive to me without like much help over the top. So that's impressive. Trent McDuffie, like I said, I value man coverage higher than zone just because, like, in my opinion, just talking to people that are more connected than I am and just about corners in the league and studying guys over the years, I just don't know if you can be a first-round corner if you don't have that man-to-man ability. Like, I don't value zone corners like that. So McDuffie, for me, is on that fringe. Just because at Washington, like, he primarily played in, like, a half-turn bail technique, primarily zone. Now, with that being said, I think McDuffie's one of the smartest players in the entire class, regardless of position. I mean, this dude has eyes in the back of his helmet in terms of, like, recognizing route concepts. I mean, super fluid, good footwork. He plays bigger than his size. The lack of length is going to be a concern. Like, I think he's probably going to move inside to the nickel. But I think if you're a team that likes to run zone and you want a really fluid corner with, some physicality, I think McDuffie's perfect fit there. And then Kyler Gordon, I think Kyler Gordon's less scheme dependent than McDuffie, despite them playing in the same college scheme. I like his ability in press. I like his footwork. He moves really well for his size too. He's a really good athlete, man. I think he ran like a 3.96 short shuttle and a 6.9 or something like that, 3-cone or something like that. His pro day. I mean, just ridiculous movement skills. And he's physical too. The thing I like about Gordon is he played in the slot at Washington. They moved him all around. You talk about some of the things that Jalen Ramsey did. I think he talked about that a little bit at his combine podium. But like they moved him around. He's a very smart player as well, who's really versatile. So I'm a big fan of Kyler Gordon. It seems like he's starting to creep back into that round one consideration now. I'm seeing some mocks with him late first. So.
Yeah, I have seen a couple of people say that he could be a late first round pick. I like Kyler Gordon. I think that he is. Like I said, Trent McDuffie surprised me with how high I saw him on some mock drafts, just because he does. He's only 5'11". The dude, I mean, like you said, they play a lot of zone. It seemed as if he snuck his way into a class, especially a class that has knocked Andrew Booth down so significantly that I look at it and go, what has he done that makes you feel that good about him? All right. Well, go ahead.
I think the thing about watching McDuffie and guys like that play in a half-turn bell technique, those cover 3 corners, there's just not a lot of NFL defenses that still really do that. Like the Steelers used to be a really cover 3 heavy team, and like you just don't really see a lot of defense like Gus Bradley. I mean, there is defenses out there that let their boundary corners play like that, but it's really few and far in between. That's not really what the NFL is transitioning towards.
So before we get into the next 3 here, shout out Donnie. If you haven't gone back, go back and find our video where Donnie just destroys Terrell Edmunds on Twitter and has blocked, because there's significant reason for Terrell Edmunds and Donnie not to get along. All right. 7, 8, and 9 here is Jalen Armour Davis out of Alabama at 7. Cam Taylor-Britt, big guy out of Nebraska. And number 9 here is Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati, which many have been very high on in this group, in this YouTube chat the last couple of weeks. What are your thoughts there? You've talked a lot about Cam Britt-Taylor being a big physical dude out of Nebraska.
Yeah. Starting with Taylor Britt, I'm a fan of the physicality that dude plays with. I mean, really energetic, physical corner. That dude loves to play the run. I was watching a game the other day when they were playing Ohio State. Man, he came up and cleaned Henderson's clock on the goal line. Like, you just don't see a lot of corners that are able to come down and run support like he can. I know a lot of people view him as a safety. I was really in between on it, man. I didn't know if I was going to put him in the corner rankings or the safety rankings. So I actually had to go back this week. I haven't watched him in probably 2 months. I had to go back this week to finalize that. I think his footwork, his back pedal needs a lot of work. It's very inconsistent. He's another guy that played a lot of zone. He plays in a half turn, but I just think his physicality, and he has a really good feel for zone coverage. I'm a fan of how he plays the game, especially on day 2. I actually think he's a Steelers fit, for what they typically look for in their corners. We talk about all the time, if you're going to play corner in Pittsburgh, you got to tackle, and Taylor Britt really does that. And then Armour Davis, who I actually have ranked ahead of him. I think I'm probably one of the higher people on him as well. I don't know what it is, man, because the dude's technique needs a ton of work. I mean, his back pedal is sometimes sloppy. He will turn the wrong way half the time. But the dude's athletic ability is so evident on his tape. I mean, the dude is both fluid and sudden. I mean, he can close ground in a hurry. And this is a guy that's only played 1 year in college, which sometimes scares people. But for me, I look at it he was Alabama's best cornerback last year on one of the best defenses in the country. He didn't allow a touchdown. He picked off 3 passes. I rarely saw him get beat deep. George Pickens got him once, but I think that was a coverage bust. that athletic ability, I just think there's a lot of upside, man. If you're looking for a press man-to-man corner on day 2, I think he's the guy, in my opinion, that you really want to go get. And then
before you answer that, what about this staff developing a corner? Do you believe? I mean, that's not the thoughts were not wrong. Like there's a long history.
I get it, Jason, and I've talked about this a lot on Twitter. So it's like a catch-22, right? Like no one, I'm not saying you, by the way. I'm just saying like when I talk corners with people for the Steelers fans, no one wants to spend a first-round pick on a corner because they're scared to death because the Steelers haven't had success at the position. But then people want to wait until later, like round 3, round 4, to try to develop a guy. So like in the past, they haven't really done that well either. So like you look at guys like Justin Lane, those guys just haven't really panned out for them. That's why for me, I go back to Andrew Booth. I would take a corner in round 1 this year because like the class is super good up top, and they might have a unique opportunity to grab a guy like Booth because he hasn't been able to test. But I will say this: I gave Cornell Lake about a lot of flack, I guess, for lack of development with their DBs in the past. It's been better under Terrell Austin. Terrell Austin has a better track record, in my opinion, in terms of developing guys. So if they do go with a guy like Armour Davis, like it's unique because he needs more playing time because he only played 1 year in college, but like he's also far away in his technique to be able to play on an every down basis. But the Steelers don't need him to do that week 1. Like you could ease him into the lineup. So, but I'm really bullish on the kid's upside. I mean, he might be a little bit boom or bust, but I'm betting on the traits and the athletic ability, man. Like the click and close ability and off man coverage is nice too. Pittsburgh's always shopping for raw cornerbacks like Ike Taylor. Yeah, I mean, it's actually funny because me and Noah were talking about this last week, but Ike was my favorite player as a kid. I played corner growing up, so like that's kind of where my love for the position kind of started. So I'm a big fan of Ike's game. He was awesome to watch.
All right, so number 9, Kobe Bryant, out of Cincinnati, yes. Played across from Sauce, and if we're being honest, took a lot of heat. I think the reason people are not as high on Kobe Bryant, and not you, but other people, is because the dude got a million targets because nobody was throwing the ball to Sauce Gardner.
Yeah, you talk about being battle tested. I mean, man, he went through the ringer, especially last season. I want to say like 75 targets or something like that. I think his best work probably comes in like off coverage, whether it be zone or man. He's got good feet at the line of scrimmage. He's pretty patient. Not the type of athlete that the guys listed above him are, but he just feels like as cliche as it sounds, he's just a baller, man. He's a gamer. Like he's somebody that I want on my team as like a cornerback 2 or cornerback 3. Like I think he's gonna have a long NFL career. He's got good size too. He's over 6'1". I'm a big fan. He had 2 interceptions last year, a couple that were taken to the house in his career. I want to say he forced 4 fumbles last year. He just has a knack for the football. Super competitive guy, played 5 years at Cincinnati. He was there forever. I talked to Kerry Crooms, the Cincinnati defensive back coach, a little bit about Kobe. And, he pretty much told me, he's like, man, I wish we could have him for 5 more years. He didn't get to coach Kobe the whole time because he was with the Titans. But he was, saying that he's been back working with all their younger DBs. And like everyone talked so glowingly about him when I was at the Cincinnati Pro Day. And I'm a big fan, especially like in like round 3.
Kobe Bryant, I think could be a steal. Do you think he's a safety? He's or not a safety, a corner. Do you think he's a corner or a safety in the NFL?
I think he's a corner. I do. I like him on the boundary. I don't think he brings that versatility, like that inside out versatility, like some of the other guys. Like I think Taylor Britt might be able to play a little bit inside, especially if you're going to go zone heavy. Obviously, he's got that safety versatility. McDuffie, Gordon, I think both of those guys inside out. We're about to talk about another guy who I think is about to probably make the switch into that nickel spot, Roger McCreary from Auburn.
Yeah. So that's you got 2 10s here. It's Roger McCreary out of Auburn, and 10B is Martin Emerson out of Mississippi State, which I will not lie, caught me a bit by surprise when I went to read this the first time.
Yeah, I haven't. So McCreary's tape is superb, man. I mean, his first ever start was in 2019. He matched up with Jamar Chase. I mean, they had him damn near following him all over the field. Like no safety help. He was running up and down with this guy. He actually got an interception on a go route. I was super impressed with his tape. it's tough to survive as a press man corner on the boundary when you have historically low length. I mean, McCreary came in under 29-inch arms, and that really does – it's going to matter at the next level. That's why I think he's probably going to go to the slot. Like, he won't fit a lot of NFL teams' thresholds for that specific measurement. But, I mean, dude's a baller. I mean, he doesn't have that elite straight line speed, but the change of direction ability, he's twitched up. He's physical, really strong guy who's not easily moved off the spot. I like him a lot. I think he's going to have to move inside at the next level because he doesn't – when you're a corner that is not going to be able to consistently get your hands on receivers because you don't have that length and then you don't have that elite straight line speed, you're going to struggle a little bit if you're trying to play press at the next level. So, we'll see what happens with him. But I still am a believer on day 2. I think he's still going to be a good player at the next level.
And then your 10B is Martin Emerson, Mississippi State. I don't think a lot of people even know who that is.
Yeah, so Emerson's I'm about to pull up his spider chart. Emerson's a very uniquely built player. 6'1", 5'8" inch, 201 pounds. He has a 79.5-inch wingspan, 33.5-inch arms. So pretty much the opposite of McCreary's build is Emerson's. I mean,
the man is Shaq.
Yeah, you literally couldn't ask for a better build from a cornerback. I mean, he's thickly built. He's strong. He's got freakishly long length. And I'm a fan of his game. Patient at the line of scrimmage, can use his hands to like reroute and zone, which I really like. And I saw examples, especially in the Alabama game, of him being able to quickly close and trigger downhill and shrink those throwing windows. And like that length makes it really hard for quarterbacks because you got to be really precise because he can cover a lot of ground, maybe not necessarily just with his lower half or his movement. Like he can cover a lot of ground with his arms. So you have to be really precise when you're throwing his way. The only drawback with him is like that straight line speed. I mean, that 4.52 or 4.53 40 he ran at the combine was really good for him because I did not think he was even going to get there. Like I thought we were looking like high 4.5s, and that was really concerning to me. He's a guy that's going to have to play with some safety help against those faster speedsters, but really physical against the run too. Like you talk about Taylor Britt wanting to come downhill and lay the wood on some people. Emerson's another guy. He ain't afraid to tackle. And that's why I think he's another fit for the Steelers in terms of being a cover 2, cover 3 zone corner that really likes to tackle. Big dude. I think he's got some upside.
So that's a good transition here because you texted me earlier today. Actually, it was last night. And you were like, yo, I want to talk about mid-round corners for the Steelers. And I was like, all right, sounds good. And I think that a lot of those guys are real late here on your list. And not even guys that we named because for those of you who haven't follow the link that I dropped on the YouTube comments, but you have a guys who just missed the cut list here afterwards. And there's a couple of names, but I think some of them would fit this bill. Who are your mid-round guys for the Steelers here?
Yeah, so we talked about Taylor Britt and Martin Emerson. I think both of those guys make some sense. Another guy that's kind of in that same mold that might be another candidate to move to safety for some teams is Alontae Taylor. He played a lot of bail coverage. His tape to me was a little more up and down. So you're doing a little more projection. That's why he didn't make my top 10. I thought that his tape was just too spotty in my opinion. A lot of footwork issues that need to be cleaned up, but he's a good athlete. I mean, he's quick and he's got straight line speed. He ran like sub 4.4 at the combine. I really like him in terms of being like a cover 3 corner. If not, you may if you're not playing a ton of zone, you may want to move him to safety, but he's another guy, physical as hell. I mean, will come up and just knock your block off. I mean, it's fun to watch him tackle guys because he just plays with like reckless abandon. And that's why I think a lot of people have him as a safety. I've seen some people's rankings have him as a safety. So yeah, he's another guy that I think is a fit. And then we already talked about, Taylor Britt, Emerson. I mean, just those zone corners that are willing tacklers, I think could be intriguing to the Steelers, provided that's what they want to continue running. I mean, they ran a ton of zone last year, not nearly as much man-to-man as they did the year before. So
what about Damari Mathis? Because that's a guy out of Pitt, really impressed me throughout this entire process, obviously. A lot of man, though. Pitt plays a very one-on-one, you're matching up, you got no help, go beat your guy defense.
Yeah, you want to talk about like Revis Island, like another
Yeah.
Pittsburgh corner. That's what they do with their corners, man. Like you're out there, you're on your own. They don't give a they're not giving you any safety help, anything like that. Matt is a guy, press man corner, explosive athlete. He's a man-to-man corner. I didn't like his eyes in zone the very rare times that I saw him play it.
Yeah.
But he's physical, man. He likes to get up in receivers' grills, makes things difficult. Does a really good job pushing receivers up against the boundary and shrinking that space. I had a problem with how grabby he was and just not locating the football. I think that's a Pitt thing, though, because I've watched Pitt corners for a long time. Dane Jackson a couple years ago was like that. They just don't look back for the football. And that can be taught, but it's really important at the next level because of how, in my opinion, I hate the way that games are officiated on the boundary. It's ridiculous that corners can't like touch receivers, but receivers can push off. But I'm not going to get into that rant. But he's going to have to learn to like lean and locate the football, or else he's going to be a penalty machine at the next level like he was in college. I think 17 penalties the last 2 years. But good player, though, explosive, man-to-man coverage ability. Guy that might be able to play right away. I mean, he's a fifth-year senior. He had a lot of reps, in college, so experienced.
Oh, yeah. DeMar is a dude. I mean, he looks like an NFL cornerback. Looks like he needs no time. That being said, though, he's a fifth-year senior for a reason. He needed to develop a little slower than most, and Pitt guys do worry a lot of people. Not the best fit for the Steelers here. Before we head out here, Jason in here somewhere was looking for a late round. Yes, he is. A late round sleeper for the Steelers. I think that's the perfect way to end this cornerback debate here. Not a slot guy. So we'll go 5th round back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got 2 7th round picks. Who can they find?
I'll give you a couple, Jason, and they're actually listed in that article that Noah's pulling these names from too. My personal favorite, like really late guy, is Joshua Williams from Fayetteville State. 6'3", 195 pounds. Another guy with freakish wingspan. He got like 33-inch arms too. Ran 4.5 40. He's a fluid mover for his size, man. Like didn't play a ton of obviously great competition. There's going to be a couple jumps up for him in that regard. But you look at what he did at the Senior Bowl, man. He didn't look out of place. And speaking of not looking out of place, another guy that I like is Jacoby Durant. I mocked him to the Steelers in the 7th round a couple weeks ago. Out of South Carolina State, which I believe is where Darius Leonard's from, I think. But anyway, another guy that when he played better competition didn't look out of place. Like they played Clemson last year, early in the season. Clemson really struggled last year, but still a lot of 4- and 5-star guys, and there ain't a lot of South Carolina State guys that are in that territory. But really had an impressive game, 2 interceptions. Had some good reps against Justin Ross, who we also assume is going to be a Steelers target. Didn't exactly blanket him, but like he didn't look lost. And when you're looking at like small school guys or sleeper guys, you're really looking for games that they played, NFL level talent and seeing how they did, if they looked overwhelmed or not. And I thought that both of those guys, when I saw them match up with, legit NFL draft prospects, they looked like they belonged. So those are 2 guys I really like. Good
list. If you guys have not gone and checked that out, you should go and check out Derek's cornerback rankings. Very well done. Shocked me already getting. I get emails a lot anymore. We talked about this. I got a real aggressive one that kind of ticked me off a little bit. But I've gotten a lot of people today actually who have reached out to me to say, Roger McGreary is last. Are we kidding me? And I'm like, go read the rest of it, man. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. All right. Before we head out, I did just say before we head out, but Jonathan's got a question for you, Derek, about Joey Blunt. I don't even know who that is.
Yeah.
Have you watched?
I do, and I haven't. I'm sorry. I know he's an incredibly explosive safety. I haven't got the chance to watch him yet. Jonathan, I'm pretty sure that I think you're the person who I'm thinking of, wrote me on Twitter about that thread of prospects that I need to watch before next week. I've gotten through a lot of those guys. If you haven't realized, I've posted like clips of like people ask me to watch like EJ Perry, Neil Farrell, Noah Ellis. I watched a lot of like late round guys like that. I haven't got the blunt, but I promise you that I will. And if I don't, but like, if you don't see me post nothing by like Tuesday or Wednesday, DM me on Twitter and I will watch him and post some stuff. I know he's very intriguing. There's a lot of obviously great draft minds out there. Several people that I really respect that like really are fans of his game in terms of like being a late sleeper. Just one more, if y'all haven't watched, one of my favorite sleeper safeties, Marquise Bell from Florida A&M. He's another small school guy that I think has a role at the next level in terms of being like a down backer. Really intriguing prospect. 5 picks, 5 forced fumbles his last 2 seasons in college. So I like him a lot too.
All right, keep an eye on all that. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. We'll be back next week, draft week. Cannot wait. Make sure to also mark your calendars before we forget, because we almost forgot last week. Draft show next week. We got plenty of guests. We got plenty of giveaways. Me and Derek will be live for 4 hours before the draft here on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Enjoy your weekend. Peace.